Today we're going to be going through Open Up Unit 4, Lesson 4, the practice problems which are focusing on half as much. Number 1, match each situation with a diagram. So before you even start looking at those, at the diagrams, at the descriptions, I do want to start looking at the diagrams. So from the looks of things, I always start with X. So that means X every time is in blue, and it's in 4 parts for each and every one of these. 1, 2, 3, 4 for every one. So if each one of these is in 4 parts, that means that we're dealing with fourths. 1/4 for each time. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, etc. And we're matching each situation. So the first one says, Diego drank X ounces. So that's what we're starting with. We've already established that X is always the blue. And Lynn drank 1/4 less than that. So 1/4 less, we know it has to be smaller. So we're looking at B or C. And it says 1/4 less. So the one that's missing 1/4 would be right here. So the one that this one gets matched with is diagram B. Next it tells us that Lynn ran X miles. So again, that's our blue section, and the X is always the blue section. Diego ran 3/4 more. 3/4 more. So, logically, the only one that's more is this one here. But just to double check, it's got 1, 2, 3. Those are still fourths, 3/4 more. So this second one is A. Now, I know you're like, well, Mrs. De Silva, we've already used B and A, so it has to be C. We know from experience that sometimes it isn't. So let's double check and make sure. So Diego bought X pounds of almonds. That's this part right here. And Lynn bought 1/4 of that. So 1/4 of that means it's only the 1/4, which is right here, which luckily for us is in fact C. So we have matched each of those diagrams up with a description. Next, we have Elena walked 12 miles. Then she walked 1/4 that distance. Uh-oh, I have an error in here. I hate when that happens. Sorry about that. I'm just going to cross it out and make it say 1/4. Elena walked 12 miles. Then she walked 1/4 that distance. How far did she walk altogether? Okay, so we know that the whole thing is 12 miles. So that's the whole thing. And we know that she then walked 1/4 more. So if we consider this to be one whole thing, plus 1/4 more. So what we'd be doing if 1, this is our distributive property, we know that the 1 here is representative of 12, so that's the same as saying 12 times 1. So those are the same, so that's 12. And then we know we need to take this, and we're adding 1/4 times 12. And just remember, we think about this, that's like saying this whole thing is being multiplied by 12. So it looks like we have a few different options here to look at. First of all, A says 12 plus 1/4. Well, 1/4 more is not 1/4 of a mile, so we know already that A is not correct. Then it says 12 times 1/4. Well, if you recall, that's right here. So obviously, we haven't, that's only part of it. That doesn't include the 12. So it can't be this one either. Next, we've got 12 plus 1/4 times 12. Well, look at us. We have that right here. So this is another reason it's always important to kind of work through it before you even look at the answers. Sometimes we do it the opposite way, but that's okay. So the first one we have that matches is C. Now remember, it says select all that apply, so we have to check all of them. The next one says 12 times the quantity of 1 plus 1/4. Look at that. There it is. Looks like D works as well. 12 times 3/4. Well, 3/4 is smaller than, we know if we multiply a number times a fraction, it's going to get smaller. Multiply by a fraction, it's going to get smaller. So if it's going to get smaller, and we know that she walked more, like bigger, more than that, she then walked more. So this one doesn't make any sense at all, so we're going to get rid of this one. 12 times 5/4. So the only way that we did not manipulate our original right here was to go ahead and add 1 plus 1/4. Well, I know that 1 is 4/4 plus 1/4, which is going to be 5/4. And that's still going to be multiplied by our 12. So 12 times 5/4. I put mine in parentheses. This has the dot, but either way, that one works as well. Next, write a story that can be represented by the equation y equals x plus 1/4 x. Well, I know that whatever I write here isn't, in all likelihood, going to be exactly what you are going to write in yours, but I can go through just a few examples. First example, I mean, really, the one that in the previous problem, we could go right with that one and say Elena walked a certain distance. Actually, I'm not even going to say that. Let me back that up and say Elena walked X miles, then walked 1/4 more. That distance. So that would work. I mean, and that I took right from the previous problem. There's nowhere that says you can't do that. Another example, we might say that for dinner, I ate some soup, then went back for seconds, getting 1/4 more of the original amount. So really, I mean, I know that everybody's going to have different situations, but the thing, the bottom line is you have to have the whole plus 1/4 of the whole. And whatever situation you fit into that, that will work. Okay, so the last problem that we have to do is we're going back to selecting those ratios that are equivalent to 4 to 5. So we've been doing this pretty much all year. So if we simply take our 4 to 5 and see if we can make them equivalent in any way. So if I wrote this as 4 to 5 in its fraction form is equal to 2 to 2.5. Now there is two different ways to do this. We can do our cross multiplication, or we can see if there's a constant of proportionality going from one to the next. Well, hopefully you can see right away that the gazinta that they share in this particular case is 2, because 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Now that's not a normal gazinta because we ended up with a decimal, but hopefully you've been looking at these numbers often enough to know that, you know, that one would work. So we know that A will work. B, this is A. If I go to B, I'm going to keep my 4 to 5, always right from left to right, top to bottom, equal to 2 to 3. Now, I'm not really sure about a gazinta in this point. I mean, I can compare it to the previous one, and I should know that it doesn't work out proportionally. However, I am going to go ahead and do that cross multiplication, just so I can practice doing it. So I would have 4 times 3 equal to 5 times 2. 4 times 3 is 12. 5 times 2 is 10. 12 times 10 is not, 12 equal to 10. It is not equal to 10, so I know that B does not work. Next one, I've got C, which tells me that 4 over 5 is equal to 3 over 3.75. Now this one I definitely don't know if these are proportional just by looking at them. I know I can go do my division, but let's again, go with the cross multiplication since we've been doing some of that now. So I'd have 4 times 3.75 equal to 5 times 3. So I go ahead and do this, 4 times 3.75. I'm not going to expect you to do this by yourself. Pull out that calculator. That's going to give me 15 equal to 5 times 3 is 15. Look at that, they match. So therefore, C is equivalent or proportional. The next one, I'm looking at D, which tells me, that is a D, which tells me that 4 to 5 is equal to 7 to 8. Well, let's go right back to that cross multiplication. So I've got 4 times 8 equals 5 times 7. 4 times 8 I know is 32. 5 times 7 is 35. These are not equal or equivalent, so therefore D does not work. E, I've got 8 to 10. So if I look at E, I've got 4 over 5, or 4 to 5, is equal to 8 to 10, or 8 over 10. Now, I don't need a calculator to look at this because I can tell right away. I know that 4 times 2 is equal to 8, and that 5 times 2 is equal to 10. So therefore, E is also equivalent. The last one that I have is F, which tells me 4 to 5 is equal to 14 to 27.5. I'm going to cross multiply to do this one because I do not know those off the top of my head. So I'm going to have 4 times 27.5 equal to 5 times 14. So again, don't be afraid of your calculator. Remember though, it's not a magic box. We only get the correct answers when we put the correct numbers in. So I've got 4 times 27.5 gives me 110 equal to 5 times 14. Again, you can use calculator for that, but if I wanted to logic this through using my distributive property, I would say to myself, I can break 14 into 10 and 4. 5 times 10 is 50. 5 times 4 is 20, and 50 plus 20 is 70. And obviously 110 is not equivalent to 70. So therefore, F does not work. So the 3 that are equivalent are A, C, and E.